Welcome, welcome, welcome. My name is Caroline Colas. I'm the Senior Director of Health and Wellness at the Marlene Meyerson JCC Manhattan, and I am your host today on the Positive Psychology Hour, a series that we do in partnership with the Whole Being Institute. Today we're going to be talking about positive psychology and caregiver support with Joanne Travers. Joanne is a nonprofit leader who has worked in low-resource communities to coach and empower caregivers of children with hearing loss, and she'll share with us how positive psychology has provided a focus for her nonprofit program and propelled well-being to others. Those faced with economic, social, and emotional challenges especially need strategies to facilitate social capital and personal resources as a way forward. While the medical model in hearing health remains an essential element of caregivers' support, the psychological well-being of caregivers is vital. And Joanne will share with us her organization's model and some of the tools she uses to inspire psychological well-being and facilitate leadership in the population she serves, based on the practices of positive psychology and positive organizational scholarship. A little bit about Joanne. She's an author and a consultant and the founder of Partners for a Greater Voice, PGV, a nonprofit organization dedicated to advancing positive journeys of parental caregivers through 5 domains of psychological well-being. PGV provides consultation and training support to parent leaders, schools, hearing health clinics, community and family-centered practices, disability organizations, and universities. Joanne has collaborated with other Whole Being Institute Certificate in Positive Psychology alumni on a chapter in the recently published Finding Unshakable Happiness. She's also the author of Coaching and Empowering Caregivers of Children with Hearing Loss, an approach to foster well-being, which provides tools and information to foster parental well-being. You can read more about that book on Partners for a Greater Voice website. I welcome to the call Joanne Travers. I'm going to spotlight you. And Joanne, I would just love to know how you even discovered the Whole Being Institute. Everyone has a different journey about that. I was just wondering how you noticed the Whole Being Institute. Was it Kripalu or what?
Yeah, it was Kripalu. I had just graduated with a 200-hour yoga certification, and I was like walking really slowly out of the lunchroom, like saying, is this really the end? Do I have to leave? And I was walking down the hall. There was this big poster with Maria and Megan's face just smiling. And I looked at it and I said, that's what I need. That's perfect. And I just signed up. I signed up and said, that's what will bring me back here to Kripalu. And it's been a journey ever since.
Yeah, well, welcome. Well, I'm looking forward to learning more about what you do and the impact that your work has had with the hearing community. And I also feel like there's lots of relevance to other communities as well. So I'm going to let you take it away and then we'll talk afterwards.
Thank you. Thank you. Are you able to bring my slides up, or I don't?
You go ahead and do that.
Oh, okay. So let me bring them up again. Is my, no, that's
Go ahead and take your time. You just share your screen at the bottom.
Oh, okay, so green. To read share, I'm sorry. I was thinking it was shared. Let me just share.
Yeah.
Do this.
Not to worry.
And then we'll.
We can see that, and then we just need it on the slideshow from the beginning.
Beginning. There we go. Super. Is that good?
Thank you. Yes, looks great.
Right, awesome. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining today. It's you know, every day I was in my yoga class this morning. I teach yin as well, and I was saying just swim your heart forward through these clouds, through this rain, and just find the sunshine, right? As we were stating our intentions and moving forward. And it's funny how that path that we all take is different, and it can take a 90-degree angle or a 180-degree angle, which was my case, unexpectedly. So I guess it's about expect the unexpected, embrace the unexpected, and what life presents in front of you is probably intentional. And I found myself working with deaf and hard of hearing populations, particularly starting in the Massachusetts area, because my 2 children were born with severe or profound hearing losses. And my husband and I chose to raise them in an oral hearing environment, which means the methodology of communication opportunities is vast. And there's sign language, there's oral communications, there's a mix of both. And we chose to raise our kids orally, meaning teaching them to listen and teaching them to speak with the use of hearing aids and technology. And we mainstream them through the schools, which began my journey of, how can I embrace this and make the best of the situation? How can I adapt, my life to help them, but also apply the skills and learning and training that I had been working so hard to do. So imagine I had come out of a master's program in Colorado. I moved to Massachusetts. I got married, and then I found out I was pregnant. This all happened within 4 months. And I was looking for global positions, and that sort of like slapped me in the face, because I said, "Oh my gosh, I'm going to have a baby. What do I expect? Or I don't know what to expect." So I waited until after my daughter was born, and she was born with craniofacial abnormalities and other conditions that needed treatment. I was probably in a doctor's office 3 days a week. And then at 12 months old, we diagnosed her hearing loss. And then my son was born, and we diagnosed his hearing loss. And then we diagnosed learning challenges, we diagnosed vision challenges, we diagnosed ADHD, so I was just in this, on this path, and all I could do was, find the way forward and embrace the possibility in the impossible, or hope in despair. So I got myself into coordinating a Massachusetts-based network of parents who all were interested in oral education and mainstreaming their children in public schools. And I was working. I was teaching at colleges. I had other little part-time jobs, and I left my job at a college in international programs to direct and manage my own nonprofit, because I was just doing too much, and I wanted to make sure that my children and family came first, while I could still contribute to the population of people who wanted support. So self-care emerged probably after 15 years of this passionate journey that I was on. And literally, this passionate journey I was on, I probably had blinders on, because I was so focused on helping others, so focused I had started 3 nonprofits, I was on boards, I was caring for my kids, I was a special advocate, I was helping my kids. It was just this just perpetual drive toward, achieving the best possible outcome for people. And I burned out. And so what I learned was that, as we know, caregiver well-being, or well-being in general, is essential to anyone's journey, right? And in my case, when I'm focused on children, I'm reading research and information on developmental psychology, where caregivers really are the most influential on their children's social, emotional, physical, and cognitive development, in that they must develop good self-perception, or have emotional health and stability, or economic stability, and be prepared to nurture the children, which can involve some skill development, particularly in the leadership area where I'm focused. So after that 15-year journey, where I just sat back, I got my Kripalu yoga certification, started doing a lot of meditation, and I did the positive psychology course with Whole Being, I realized that what I had been doing was all along trying to focus on the psychological well-being of caregivers. And I hadn't done it for myself. So the journey to heal happened when I started yoga 7 years ago, and I just stayed on that path. And the journey to heal myself and to experience what was happening, emotionally, with myself, socially, with my family, with so much in my life, with my journey and jobs and work, that my well-being mattered just as much. And so we recreated the focus of my nonprofit to identify domains of well-being. So that actually stems back to what began with that parent group, that network I was mentioning to you, that social capital how valuable it is of people making connections. And I had initially just wanted to get parents together, but what was happening is we were bringing families together. We were bringing kids together. This is my son and another boy from years ago. My kids are now 25 and 27. These kids keep in touch with each other. But I want to read something. I hope, Phoebe, you don't mind. I'm going to read something on social capital from her book when she intros how social capital is a term coined by Wayne Baker. And he defines social capital as how willing people are to help others in their social network. And she goes on, and I encourage you all to pick up a copy of Unshakable Happiness. It's full of great resources, but that particularly resonates with me because initially, sometimes when you engage in this social capital business, when you engage in bringing people together, you don't realize the benefits, you don't realize the outcomes until you actually experience them. And in this case, all of these parents were so willing and able to share their stories that were so powerful in the transfer of knowledge and how we were to raise our kids, how we were to, advocate for them in the schools, and then through that learning journey, support each other emotionally and socially. So this evolved, and I ended up starting a nonprofit that worked internationally and globally. And we started in the Dominican Republic. We've been to India, we've been to Honduras, we've supported folks in parts of Africa. But the focus of the nonprofit was to build capacity, and social capital is a huge part of that. So we provided resources to support schools, to support and involve teachers, audiologists, and always, every mission that we were on, we engaged parents in group conversation and sharing. And it was such a powerful thing, because what happens and what emerges is, particularly in the disability field, if you look at the history of advocacy, legislation, policy, rights for persons with disability, UNICEF, all of these organizations that support progress and inclusion, parents are a huge component of that. And then children or persons with disabilities are a huge component of that to drive change, to drive inclusion and support, and to break down barriers of shame, of guilt, of discrimination, particularly. So I travel to low resource communities where stigma, shame, discrimination are really, really harsh. And we try to embrace the positive, the possible and the impossible, the hope within despair, to engage in overcoming challenges and find solutions to help people thrive, to help our children thrive. So the domains of well-being, I share them in a book, Coaching Empowering Caregivers. I came up with caregiver well-being as a central focus of the program, and we have these modules that we do that help, people to understand positivity and mindset, like the whole growth mindset, seeing what's possible, how you can overcome challenges through self-initiated change. But to do that, there's a lot of things we need to do personally, right? That growth and self-awareness of our understanding of ourselves. And part of that has to do with getting parents together, getting teachers together, getting practitioners together, getting all of them together. That whole social capital, capitalizing on all of that and getting people to share and to talk openly and honestly. Leadership is a huge component. We did a leadership conference in India and in a few places, which also links with your internal personal resources. And those are things that don't cost money for people. Those are things that we can just innately look to and try and pull from people to make them aware of and to move forward with those resources. And clearly, character strengths is a huge component of that as well. So here's a group in India. I think these folks are from Pune. We were in Mumbai and Ahmedabad and Pune, and working with a group of parents and parent leaders who had they call circles, like all over. They have probably over 800 families now involved in the group. But back in the day, back in 2008, I had gone to help them start the parent group. And these women and men are amazing. And they have really driven change through capacity building and social capital that has now created all kinds of programs, mainstream education guides. Parents have become professional teachers, audiologists. It's really driven so much and affects so many people in communities where some families don't have the resources to get an education. And they need supports to help navigate the system, help navigate raising their children. Some of the things that we do in these trainings include, we really like to start with values, beliefs, and it was kind of interesting because I remember sitting in Pune and asking the question, let's explore the vision you have for your child. And so many people had never ever been asked that question, right? So what is the vision you have for your child? So here you are, a parent of a child who's deaf. You're stigmatized, you're shamed, you're guilty, you're just abandoned and isolated, not knowing where to go. And now I'm asking you, what's your vision for your child? And in a sense, it sounds very dismal, but when we tie that into what values and belief systems they are, so we can break down limiting beliefs, they all start talking with one another about, that's what I want. That story that I heard is what I want for my child. And so we have to create in the intangible vision, we have to create something tangible for them to be able to say, yeah, that's where I want to go. And it's like all of our lives, right? It's like, how do we know what our vision is for our life if we don't have that perspective, if we don't have that communication and conversation with other people to help us envision what is possible, even for our own lives. So it applies really powerfully across the board. We include active listening, reflective listening through storytelling. We acknowledge leadership behaviors and try to foster leadership behaviors in parenting through a bunch of assessments and group exercises. And clearly, we love to work on fostering character strengths. That's a big one right here at JCC and Whole Being. We're constantly talking about how our signature strengths, those strengths that come easy to us, can help launch us down with certain meaningful intentions that bring us to that vision that we have in positive ways. And it becomes a happier journey as a result. And so the personal capital, like leadership skills, is something that is important to facilitate how people kind of work toward any goal that they have or any vision that they may have. And so I thought I'd share with you 2 exercises that we do internationally. It's about 20 after. So each one is probably just going to take about, 10 minutes or so. And I'd like to start with what I call a resilience assessment. And I'll explain it. And I'm hoping people have a piece of paper and a pencil. If you don't, you might want to reach for a piece of paper, a blank piece of paper and a pencil. And we'll start there, and then we'll go to the next one. And I'll just walk you through it to make it easier. They're both basically self-reflective and obviously have everything to do with self-awareness and self-care. So take time. You don't have to, in my slide here, I apologize, it says parents take time to reflect upon a challenging situation you've had. But it can be, teacher, doctor, sister, brother, take time to reflect upon a challenging situation you have had at home, or maybe at school, or at church, or community, or your work, or with a child, or with a spouse, or with a friend. So what I'd like to do is just take a mindful minute and pause. And you're welcome to close your eyes and get a comfortable position with maybe your feet on the floor. And just think about that challenging situation for a while. Let's all just take that first initial deep breath in through the nose. Feel as if the spine is nice and tall. Fill up and then exhale out. Just allow the shoulders to draw down away from the ears as you maintain a seated posture with your eyes closed or maybe soft gaze. Just take a few moments to breathe, to connect to this inner world, heart, the energy of your body. Let the breath just flow easily as you transition your mind to think or reflect upon a challenging situation you've had. Maybe one you've overcome, maybe one you haven't. What runs through your mind, maybe your heart? How does your body, reverberate or resonate, or what's the felt sense of the body that maybe has responded to that challenging thought or situation? So I'm going to ask you all to gently, calmly, when you're ready, to open your eyes. Take that piece of paper and a pencil or pen. And on my screen here, you'll notice there are 4 boxes. So draw just like this big, cross right through the center of the page. So you have 4 boxes on your piece of paper. And in the upper left, write heart or emotions. In the upper right, write mind or perhaps learning or thinking. And then the lower left, write body. And in the lower right, put spirituality or your spirit. And this is something that you can take with you, but right now, based on that challenging situation you're reflecting on, it's a personal challenge, right? A personal challenge that you have. Look to the heart box and what emotions are associated with that, and just list it or write it in a sentence, however you want. Think about it for a moment if you need to, but what resonates from the heart? What emotions are attached or linger with a challenging situation? I had someone yesterday when I was doing a presentation ask, what do you mean? Well, I said, I don't know. Is a challenging situation something you fear? Is it something that you're excited about figuring out? So sometimes those heart-based emotions get mixed up with the mind, right? So shift over to the mind box and think about your thoughts, right? Think about how dominant your thoughts can be. Are there negative thoughts that kind of continually challenge you when you're trying to overcome this challenging experience? Are there ideas that you conjure up, that you think about, that might help you with this challenging situation, and they just kind of linger there? They do nothing. Or maybe there are some ideas that sort of percolate up that you've tried successfully, unsuccessfully, doesn't matter. What in the mind, what learning experiences maybe, and that can also be like things from the past, things culturally are, kind of woven into our neural circuitry of our brains, right? Our experiences, the education that we've had, the upbringing, influences of our family, our parents. So things that are learned, that are sort of in the brain, right? Things that are learned. What comes to your mind when you think about this challenging situation that is more mind-based than emotion-based? Give you a minute. Some of you are looking up. So let's just give it another 30 seconds for some other people to just keep writing. And then shift your awareness down to that lower left corner of the page, your physical body. Think of the situation that you're in and how your body responds. What physically do you get tense? Do you jitter? Do you fidget? Do you back off? Do you run towards? I mean, what is your physical body action maybe, or the response of your physical body? Tension, when you are challenged with this personal experience or situation. And just break down some things here. And then shift your awareness over to that bottom right of your page when you're ready. If you're still writing, that's fine. The intention here is to share with you this tool. We usually spend a lot more time on this in person, but just to expose y'all to just one little task here. Spiritually, your faith, with a strong faith, have some form of spirituality within us. What comes to mind there? And just write down a few things there when you're ready. And I'll give everyone a minute to kind of look and reflect on what they're writing, if they wanted to add anything to any of the boxes. And when you're just about ready, you can just tilt your gaze up. This is something you can always continue to work on. Yeah. But now, yeah, I hear someone. I don't know who that is. I'm sorry.
I muted them. It's not a problem.
Okay, thank you. So now we have this graph. We have this graph of, as we separated out heart, mind, body, and spirit on this challenging personal event or situation in our lives that we can reflect on. And the first step, right, in assessing our self-care or our resilience is to notice what you've written, to notice the differences between your heart, your mind, your physical body, and how might you take care of that? How might you find a forward way thinking of overcoming a challenge that you may have physically with this challenging situation, or that you might have that's heart-based? Breaking it down just to become more, adept and understanding of this challenge. So I want to just open it up if I can. No one has to share. No one has to comment on their personal challenge. No pressure. No one even has to comment. But if anyone has a question, or if you want to, like a lot of you are trained in resilience or in positive psychology, if you want to add something that resonated with you in this exercise. I would love to hear it, or I'm sure everyone would love to hear how you might share your comments about that.
Diana had a question. What was the body aspect? I don't know if you reviewed it, and again, she just wanted to know a little
Sure.
bit more about that.
Yeah. So physically, how your body responds. So when you, I'm going to give you a picture. You know, you walk on stage and you have to give a presentation in a challenging situation as you've never presented before. So how is your body physically responding? Does it tense up? Does it get nervous? Does it sweat? You know, what's going on in the body physically? What physical activity is experienced in the challenging situation? Basically making you aware, right? And if we were to have that conversation, we'd probably say, well, some of the hormones of fear or worry are probably some of the same hormones that trigger excitement. And how can we shift the mindset, you know, from that physical reactivity of being fearful of getting up and presenting to something more positive. So this is a springboard in which you can break down these boxes, break down what you've then become aware of, these questions that might run through your mind, or your heart, your physical body, the responses of either, of spirituality.
It strikes me that this is a way to access growth mindset too.
Yeah.
Right.
I
That,
agree.
you know, I was thinking of my situation, and sometimes we're human, right? So if there's an argument or a challenging situation in which one person hasn't done as best as they've done the best that they can, but maybe it hasn't met expectations or something like that. We have those very human moments where there's disappointment or hurt or that kind of thing. And then adding that, well, how can I grow from this? And what do I value? I went right into the spirit, like, am I living into my value if I'm holding on to, you know, being hurt and not, I was just thinking of my situation, which is that I had an argument with a friend and I was disappointed in their response. And, you know, we kind of left and we haven't really connected again. And then I thought, well, oh, I'm hurt, which was why I'm at my heart. And then my mind was, it's their fault.
Yeah, yeah.
And then I like looked to my body and I was like, oh, I can feel a tenseness and a tightness in my body, right? And then from my spirit, I went to, okay, well, wait a second. I believe that, you know, we're human and permission to be human. And I thought, oh, growth mindset could really help me here and living into my values and reaching out and having compassion. But it was,
And
I don't know if I was using it correctly, but
yes,
that's kind of,
absolutely. And I think, you know, maybe your strength of forgiveness could go in that spirit box, right?
yeah,
Or
that's
heart
great.
box even. And so you can see how it's a very versatile tool. If you imagine, you know, being families struck with kids with disabilities, you're also going to be looking at, oh my gosh, I have I have love for my child. That's what's going on emotionally when I'm being challenged with my child's disability. And that's resilience. You know, that's also, there's a whole conversation around resilience here that you could also have. So a lot of applications. Anyone else want to comment or?
Yes, Sherry Kelly was saying a lot of us parents and grandparents are exhausted. This impacts resilience and coping. This is a mind-body connection as well as a physical exhaustion. And I don't know if you can unmute Sherry and talk about that, but that's a very good point. What you say, Joanne?
Yeah,
Exactly.
hi Joanne. Hi Joanne. Some of the parents I work with, and I'm a parent also, we're exhausted, and COVID's
Yep.
made us even more exhausted, especially if you've had kids at home, or if you're a grandparent who's the caregiver also. There's a physical exhaustion and there's a mental exhaustion, and it works together, and it's impacting resilience.
I agree. So now, what's the mind or spirit box saying to some of these parents? And we can't answer that because every parent is a little different. But the awareness of assessing that resilience can do lots of things to springboard into a conversation, right? Into a conversation about how we can overcome a challenging situation, and that can go in any direction. I love that you brought that up. because even in general, even without COVID, parenting, or even without children with disabilities, parenting is exhausting, and especially if you're working and balancing a lot in your family. So.
And Joanne, I wonder if you can comment on how you used this rubric when you yourself realized, oh my gosh, I'm burnt out, right?
So I discovered this rubric when I was healing, and we after the positive psychology, after the yoga and all the teaching, I collaborated with people, and I had gone to a lot of conferences over the years. And so I pulled this from one conference and workshop that I went to. It was a special needs conference. And she presented it a little bit differently, and I've adapted it. It's not Mary Avery was her name, but she took it from someone else as well. And I apologize, I don't know the original origins of this rubrics, but that's where I got it from. And I started to apply it thinking this is perfect, because what I was doing in yoga was separating out my mind, my heart, my body, my spirituality, and it was becoming very clear, right? Those layers, those doshas and koshas, and everything was, becoming clearer as that whole self-awareness and journey to heal, or journey to become aware of what's possible.
Yeah. It takes time, doesn't it? Joni mentioned that in the way that I use this, when I read what I wrote, the left side was like the swamp, and the right side ended up being like the pond, as Maria Serwat talks about. And it was an invisible and in the middle.
Interesting. I would love to talk more about that. That is cool.
I don't know if you want to unmute, Joni.
Hi, sure. Yeah, I mean, I didn't do it intentionally. I just was writing what I felt. And then when I looked at it, I realized like my heart was holding shame and sadness and fear. And then when I looked at the mind side, it was more how I could move out of that. The thought, could be, how does this serve me? Or I'm triggered and I feel like I have my back to the wall. How can I move out of that and, take a pause, and what can I think now that I'm not triggered? So it was more like, moving towards the pond and realizing. And so when I look at it, I was like, oh, it's like there's a little invisible and in the middle there. Just how it played out for me. Or the body was, tense shoulders, and tired and foggy. And on the spirit side, it was recognizing my persistence and needing self-compassion and kindness and hope for changing. And
hope. That's great. Thank you for sharing.
That's beautiful, Joni. And I look at mine and I'm like, oh yeah, mine's kind of that way too. It doesn't mean that everyone's is, but it's sort of that way too. Joy had a question. Joy, I don't know if you want to unmute. Is there a chart with more detail for each section that I will then print? Nope. I don't know.
No, keeping it very general and very basic. I work too much content in the mind. I feel like it can go in any direction you really want it to, and it's just a basic springboard in which to just be aware of the challenging situation and be aware of what runs through your mind, your heart, your body, and spirit, and see how you can reflect on all of that and move forward. Good.
I would have liked more detail.
Okay. Okay, that's good to know. I think we have conversations about it more so when we do like day-long workshops and things. I had plans to do another exercise, unless we wanted to break out into sessions. And I mean,
I think we could do another exercise. Okay. There's about 27 of us on the call.
Okay, let's do another exercise. And maybe what I can try to do is send Phoebe something that can go out with Fridays. Why don't I do that? Okay, to give more detail.
Sure.
But I like to keep things simple, right? But okay, so I'll move to the next slide, which some of you may be familiar with. It's used in corporations, it's used, business and leadership programs. And it's a circle of influence, or sphere of influence. And in this exercise, we become aware and reflect on things that we can control, things that we have no control over, and things that we might be able to influence. And again, it's another awareness assessment, a reflection on an experience that you have, or experiences that you have, of things we can control, things we can't control, and things that we may be able to influence. And so something like this, on a piece of paper, maybe you flip your piece of paper over, you draw a big circle, and in that circle it says, I have no control over certain things. And then there's another circle that you may write things that you control, that you have direct control over, right? And things in sort of that meld both things you can't control or control that you might be able to influence. And so I'll give you some examples. Things that you can't control. My children had disabilities. I can't control that, right? I can't change that, right? It's pretty innate in their persona, in their bones, in their brains, in their hearts. They have these conditions that they're coping with, that they're gonna have to learn to cope with. But I can influence that by providing supports as a parent to influence how that journey becomes for them, to help them make choices, or to help them facilitate their learning and development. So I can control some of those things, and I can influence some of those things, right? So I can influence as much as I can, but ultimately, can I control my kids? I want to be a facilitator of their development. And so sometimes influential things that you can influence and things that you can control are kind of gray in that area. But basically, they control their destiny. They control choices that they make. I can't control their choices, but I can influence the buffet of opportunities for them to experience, so they can make their own choices, make them effectively. The other things that I can control directly is everything to do with me. My attitude, my language that I use. I can control my behavior. I can control how I handle a challenging, tantrum situation. And mind you, my daughter had 1.5 hour tantrums every day. And how I control myself in her presence. I was teaching, or I was at a college, and I went up to a professor of psychology, and I said, you gotta help me with this. I'm like dying. And I went over to him. I said, my daughter has these tantrums. I realize she can't control her hearing, and she's trying to control her environment. And I don't want to have that parent struggle. I want to help facilitate and influence, manageable behavior. And so he said, well, what do you do? I said, well, I couldn't take it anymore. All I did is I sat in her little tiny rocking chair. I put my hands on my lap, and I put my head down. And she was having this tantrum, and then she started walking around me and watching me, and I did nothing. I just went like this, and she calmed down. He goes, well, that seemed to work. And so I controlled my behavior because I didn't want to be in a rage, because she was in a rage. And what could I do? I could model, being calm. I could model not being reactive. Those were in my control, right? And then how I influence is a conversation with her when she's ready to have that conversation about her tantrums, and allowing her to have control over things she needs to control, because she can't control her hearing necessarily. So there was a lot going on. It's the dynamics of things you can control, what you can't control, what you can influence. And so I thought, in this next exercise, this is all good. Joni, you want to add to this? I'm sure you've heard of this.
Yeah, no, I think it's great. And I work with parents of kids with ADHD. So, I definitely talk to them a lot about this, and about how to, it's so important for the parent to be regulated and stay regulated, and using positive psychology tools to do that while the child is dysregulated. Otherwise, you just have two dysregulated people. And
Yeah,
that doesn't
yeah.
end well. So yeah, this is great and so important.
So on your piece of paper, let's think about things you can control, things you can't control. Maybe you take that challenging situation you just had and you assess what in that challenging situation things you can control and things you can't control. And write in the box or on the side of the boxes things you can control. You know, maybe there have been conversations that you've had with others to help you find a solution to that challenge. Maybe there are other questions that sort of arise as you kind of explore that challenge, or that you might ask yourself about, really, what can I control, or what can't I, or how can I influence them? I'm going to give you all a couple minutes. I put those questions up on the side of the slide because there might be things that you would do differently if you're assessing this after this, you know, brief conversation we've had. So I'll give you a couple minutes to kind of explore this. So one of the most powerful things this can do is it can help us reduce our stress levels and actually increase our happiness. Because what we can begin to emerge in the understanding of things we can control or not control, like we can't control the national debt, right? But we can control our own wealth, or right? Our own protection of our assets, or so, you know, the influence of change, you know, how we behave in those situations all has a lot to do with a happier journey that we're carrying ourselves forward to confront challenges that we've had. Would anyone like to add to that or comment on that, or maybe have a question? I can't see the chats too much because of my slides, but oops, sorry.
Amy said this concept and the serenity prayer has been huge for me, especially during the pandemic. And Sherry Kelly said, great exercise.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, we can't control a pandemic or the things they take away from us, requirements and constraints that are in our towns, but we can influence our attitude toward it. We can influence our mindset and how we can, you know, accept what there is, accept things as they are, and adapt and be forward thinking.
I was even thinking of what Viktor Frankl says, you know, in between stimulus and response, there is a pause, right? And there's a choice. So what I was thinking about is like what's within my control, what I spend my money on, what I eat, my language, my behavior, what I read, you know, everything that influences my state.
Yeah, especially what you read, what you see, people you interact with, your tribe, that can even influence what you know, how you behave. So we do have choices. And I love that. I remember reading that. I can't remember what chapter in this book it was in, but I do remember reading Mr. Frankel's that pause in between. I love that you brought that up. Thank you. Thank you.
Diana says, I'm thinking about the unexpected. I can't control the way the other will respond to what I am trying to bring up in a conversation. It's very true.
So what questions can you ask yourself? What might you do differently? What questions or your approach to people could be different, that there's, a different response? What can you influence? That would be in the influence comment, like communication. How are you communicating? That's what comes to my mind. And I'm only saying that not because I'm trying to analyze your situation at all. I'm only saying it because of my situation, because I remember, I'll tell a personal story. My husband, he'd be confronting all the time. And I would just say, but don't you understand? Like, this is what I'm trying to tell you. And then I realized my communication skills could improve. So I said, all right, what might I do differently to overcome this challenge? So I'm not in this, confrontational conversation. And I switched my language with my husband, and it made the world's difference. That's my situation. But I don't know what yours is, but that comes to mind when you mentioned that.
I was also thinking what our speaker said on Tuesday, Catherine, about what Linda Wallace said about listening and how you can watch someone who is talking to you as if you were watching a movie, right? You can really listen to them. You can take them in versus interrupting them. That's a change in style, communication style, to really, versus fixing them or solving the problem, or, but really just to listen and be there, be present for someone.
I love that. You're looking out at a movie, and it begins with us, right? It begins with us and our attitude and our language and how we communicate. And that, where's your self-compassion? Where's your love? Where's your kindness? Where are all of these innate qualities that you can share, your strengths, as we move forward to overcome challenging situations.
And Diane, I don't know if you wanted to unmute and talk a little bit more about that unexpected idea of, because I do agree with you that every conversation is an improvisation, right? We don't know what someone else is going to say. And sometimes we don't know what we're going to say. So,
yeah, no, I find that to be so challenging, because it's being present in the moment for what you're hearing. And perhaps, of course, you don't know what to expect the response will be. So it kind of, the requirement to be present, and like he said, Caroline, really listen, is a demand on the inner self to, I don't know, bring up the compassion and maybe focus more on the listening. I just know I become flooded with fear when the response is something foreign to me. I become stumped, I kind of like, oh my God. So that's a huge problem I have.
And does it help, Diana, to think of it like I'm watching a movie? I don't really even necessarily have to respond here. I can just take it in, and I can give myself a moment to say, you know what, let me get back to you about that. Or, wow, I don't know how to respond. As Daniel Siegel talks about, name it to tame it, to just say, wow, I'm surprised by that. I just need a moment to respond, or I need to think about that. Would that be helpful?
That's a great idea. It never occurred to me, Carolyn. I love that idea. Like, take a step back, like take a pause. Yeah.
Yeah. And some of us, Joanne, don't you find this too when you're working with, caregivers of all kinds and from all different countries, that we all have different styles and our capacity is different. So the ability to take in information, sometimes, especially if where you're overstimulated by and tired, right? And not that resourced. It really is important. It's like, maybe like I just need a break from the conversation right now so that I can take some things in, right?
And there's a lot of content, right? Information overload, like you have so much that you're taking in that sometimes you just need to take that pause and listen.
Yeah, Susan had a comment. I usually focus on how I can influence the other person, but I like that the control circle is bigger and the self-control is the larger focus. Beautiful, Susan. That's a great comment. Yeah.
So I want to thank you all for, letting me share a couple of these things and to the enriching conversation of comments that were made. There's a chapter in Unshakable Happiness that I was invited to submit that is about my work in India, and how we infuse positive psychology and our domain of well-being that I presented earlier. And then this other book that I wrote, Coaching Empowering Caregivers, even though it focuses with hearing loss, it does universally apply, as you know, positive psychology concepts. And from my experience working in several low resource communities, there's tools in there, lots of resources in it. If you are interested, it's available online, virtually, you can, electronically or hard copy.
Yeah, I have a copy of the book. It's great. So,
Oh,
I highly recommend it. Yes, everybody. And I believe Donna is on the call today, which is really nice. And Dr. Sherry Kelly said also that it's a good exercise to evaluate your expectations of yourself as a parent, your parenting partner, and the expectations you have of your kids too, because that could be influencing your response, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We all have visions. We all have the vision for our kids, maybe, and maybe our kids end up, having their own vision. How are we listening to that, right? If we're talking about parenting specifically.
And I'm just going to stop sharing for a moment. Was this your last slide? Oh, you got it.
Last slide. I just want to say thank you, and you're all welcome to reach out to me. I think we're going to be sharing the slides with the group later this week. So thank you all. Reach out to me if you would like to have a conversation.
And Joy had a comment, a fabulous mindfulness book for children recommended by the NYT, published by Abrams Appleseed, is I Am Human. The graphics and message are full of self-compassion. On the last 2 pages, I will keep trying to be the best version of me. I am full of hope. I am human. And Deirdre said, and why do you ask? Because some people are just plain noisy. Deirdre, you can unmute and tell us what you mean by that if you want. And then I'm going to just, so we can see.
This is Deirdre, the woman who was saying that she gets overwhelmed sometimes when she doesn't know how to respond to something, some exchange. And I find often people ask questions not out of any real desire to know anything. They're just being nosy. And when you ask them, why do you ask? They usually become flummoxed and move on to something else, like how's the weather? Nice day. That's all I meant.
I love it. I love all these communication strategies because we have different conversations, right, with different kinds of people. We were talking on Tuesday about, the importance of just interacting with strangers, right, and how that can uplift our spirits. And Barbara Fredrickson has done a lot of work in that regard to really connect, that we're designed for human connection. And then, absolutely, Deirdre, what do we do when things go awry or when we want to set some boundaries? I think that's a great comment. Why do you ask, right? And thank you for that, sharing that. That's wonderful. Joanne, do you have any final words that you want to share with us before we? I just want to
thank you all. It's short time to be able to share so much that I would love to. Thank you, Donna, to share with you more if we have more time. But thank you all for listening and participating. And you have a beautiful day. Put your best self forward, girls and guys. Find that inner light. Shine it out.
We have taken off the spotlights. If anybody would like to unmute and thank our speaker, Joanne Travers, you're welcome to do so. We're just, this was a great exercise. I think it's very practical and useful and simple, so that I learned a lot about myself. And I thank you so much for joining us. And everyone have a great weekend. We will see you next week.
Wonderful job, Joanne. So happy to know
Thanks so
you.
much, Joanne.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Happy holidays, everybody.
Appreciate you both.
Thank you.
Take care.
Great to see you. Have a great weekend. We'll see you next week. All right. Take care. Happy December, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.